Welcome to the midweek edition of the news on DBS TV. Here we are in Douala, particularly in the Douala 1 subdivision. It is a metropolitan city which reconciles in spite of itself the dynamism of its populations with the disorder of its neighborhood. Miles away from the Douche municipal area, our observation is remarkable, with the dilapidated stretch of road that makes circulation difficult for vehicles and commercial motorbike riders. According to this taxi driver, the situation is pathetic, as he wonders what government officials think whenever they go through the road. To this bike rider, it causes a lot of inconvenience, especially when there is traffic. The damages are visible as it causes punctured tires and constant breakdowns, forcing them to go for constant repairs. By so doing, they say reduces their income and savings. Yet, the rehabilitation of this road requires just the will from those who have the competent authority to do so. Small and medium-sized enterprises in Cameroon have just received a wave of hope for a revival of their activities. The European Investment Bank has handed a sum of over 10 million euros to those companies with an aim of revamping the sector. The beneficiary enterprises were chosen based on a privileged partnership and support for the economic well-being of Cameroon. With the agreement reached and signed between both parties, Société Générale is on course in supporting the economy as a whole, but above all, the essential and reliable partner of small and medium-sized enterprises. This new accord will be injected into sectors hit hard by COVID-19. Also, loans will be made on more flexible terms, taking into account the sudden changes, according to the executive director of SGE. Two hours, 15 minutes and 40 seconds for Mugisha Moise from Rwanda to touch the final line as the winner of the first lap of the Chantal Biya International Cycling Competition in Douala, backing the trophy and a cash prize of 200,000 francs CFA. Mugisha overpowered Cameroonian Michel Chinte by 1 second, and a second Cameroonian, Kwere Nunawe Eric, arrived in the third position. The first lap, 96 kilometers, began on Wednesday morning with 59 cyclists from the 10 teams. Jersey number 94 from Benin abandoned the race halfway to the finish line. The Rwandan Mugisha Moise came out the overall best wearing the yellow jersey, the rose jersey for the winner of the first lap, as well as the first in the category of youth wearing the white jersey. The first lap rounded up, and the next appointment is taken for the second lap in the center region from Akonolinga to Abongbang, covering a distance of 140 kilometers, Thursday, November 19, 2020. We open the African page in Somalia, where at least 5 people have been killed in Mogadishu on Tuesday after a suicide bomber detonated an explosive belt near a police academy. Mohammed Abdirahman, a police officer at the scene, said 2 of the victims of the attack were police personnel. 8 other people were wounded and rushed to the hospital, some in serious condition, he said, adding, the bomber targeted a restaurant frequented by police. The Somalia-based Al-Shabaab extremist group often targets Mogadishu. They claimed responsibility for the raid in a statement. The Al-Qaeda-linked group frequently carries out bombings and gun attacks on military and civilian targets, including at hotels, intersections and checkpoints, as part of its campaign to topple the country's internationally recognized government. Thousands of people have died in the violent clashes between the fighters and government forces. As it has been for a while in Ethiopia, its leaders have warned that the final and crucial military operation will soon be launched against the rulers of the country's rebellious northern Tigray region. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed on Tuesday said a 3-day deadline to surrender had expired, paving the way for a final push on Mekelle, the region's capital. The warning comes after federal government forces carried out precision-led and surgical air operations outside Mekelle, a government emergency task force said, and ground forces pushed forward. The Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF), which governs the region, said civilians had been killed in the attacks, allegations the task force denied. But with communications down and media barred, it is impossible to independently verify assertions made by any side. Security forces say that Mekelle is the price needed to defeat the TPLF, and in the next 48 hours, they will be carrying out attacks on different sites in the capital of the Tigray region. They are calling this a law enforcement operation against impunity to bring it to an end once and for all. Mali held a state funeral for former President Amadou Toumani Touré, an emblematic figure who steered the troubled nation to free elections and led it for a decade before being ousted in a coup. Touré, sometimes called Mali's soldier of democracy, died on November 10 at the age of 72 after he had been transferred to Turkey for medical care following a heart surgery. A coffin draped in the national flag and borne by 6 soldiers was slowly carried into the center of the square in the capital of Mali for ceremonies attended by the leaders of the country's latest coup and by foreign dignitaries. The country's transitional government of President Ba Ndao and the Vice President Assimi Goïta, who led the August 18 coup, were present. Niger and Guinea-Bissau were represented by their prime ministers, and other countries in the region sent envoys. Acting Defense Secretary Christopher Miller has announced plans to reduce U.S. troop levels in Iraq and Afghanistan, saying the decision fulfills President Donald Trump's pledge to bring forces home, even as Republicans and U.S. allies warn against a rash withdrawal. The U.S. Department of Defense confirmed it is to reduce troops from about 4,500 in Afghanistan and about 3,000 in Iraq, less than a week before President-elect Joe Biden takes office. He equally added that the U.S. remains ready to respond if security conditions deteriorate. The withdrawal plan falls short of Trump's often repeated vow to end America's long wars. It also runs counter to his guidance that troop withdrawals be based on the conditions on the ground, not on a date on the calendar. In Afghanistan in particular, military and defense leaders have consistently said the Taliban has not yet met requirements to reduce violent attacks against Afghan government forces. U.S. forces have remained in Afghanistan since they invaded in October 2001. The decision has already received a cool reception from some Republican leaders on Capitol Hill and a somewhat uncommonly blunt critique from NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. Thai police has fired water cannon and tear gas on pro-democracy protesters attempting to get close to parliament, where lawmakers were debating possible changes to the military-scripted constitution. At least 55 people have been injured, some with gunshot wounds. Police fired water cannon and tear gas at protesters who cut through razor wire barricades and removed concrete barriers outside the parliament. The police denied that they had opened fire with live ammunition and said they were investigating who might have used firearms. The protest movement, which has called for deep constitutional reform to a system demonstrators say has established the power of the military, has emerged as the biggest challenge to Thailand's establishment in years. Thousands of demonstrators converged on Parliament to put pressure on legislators discussing changes to the constitution. The protesters also want the removal of Prime Minister Prayuth Chan-o-cha, a former army ruler, and to curb the powers of King Maha Vajiralongkorn. Another protest was set for central Bangkok this Wednesday, November 18. And French politicians are debating a new law that will criminalize any social media videos which identify police officers. Article 24 would amend current legislation to make it an offense to show the face or identity of any officer on duty with the aim of damaging their physical or psychological integrity. The offense would carry a prison sentence of up to 1 year and a maximum fine of 45,000 euros. Proposed in October by President Emmanuel Macron's La République En Marche and its ally Agir, Parliament earlier rejected it. Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin says the new amendment is necessary to protect those who protect us amid reports that the police officers are being increasingly targeted and threatened. But the proposed law has proven controversial, with human rights groups and media organizations who argue that the wording is too vague and is a danger to press freedom. To end with health news, Moderna has said its vaccine is 94.5% effective against coronavirus. This comes a week after US drug giants Pfizer and Germany's BioNTech reported promising trial results from their COVID-19 vaccine candidate. US biotechnology firm Moderna on Monday, November 16 said the preliminary trial data showed its vaccine to be at 94.5% effective at preventing illness, offering hope of a second breakthrough. Reports say it appears to have prevented more serious outcomes of COVID-19. 11 cases of severe disease were reported in those who got the placebo, and no severe disease was reported in those who received the vaccine. The hopeful news from both companies comes as many European countries are in the middle of a second lockdown to prevent the spread of coronavirus, with hospitals nearly at capacity. Representatives from both companies hailed the results as an important milestone in their vaccine development. And that was it for this edition of the news. Thanks for watching. But don't go away, for programs continue on DBS TV.